When space itself began erasing planets, the galaxy turned to humanity, masters of war and survival. Humans joined forces with a civilization that had never known violence, to fight an enemy that devoured possibility. But victory created new monsters, those who harvest heroism and weaponize stories. To save the future, the crew of the flagship Harmony fought not with legend, but with normalcy, learning to wage war in silence. Now, a new threat is stealing the ordinary, to create gods from fiction. Stay with us to find out how the story ends, and don't forget to subscribe. For 12 millennia, the Heliarch confluence believed itself inoculated against every cosmic cruelty. Its 31 species wove cultures into tapestries of resonance, crafting cities grown from singing courts and policy charters debated in harmonic chorus rather than shouted across bloodstained parliaments. The very word war had faded into an archaic glyph archived under obsolete social pathology. Conflict had become a distant ghost, until the night the stars themselves began hemorrhaging. It started in the Calyx Expanse, a trade corridor so placid that shipping logs read like lullabies. Cargo barges exited fold space to discover their destination moons replaced by shimmering cavities, emptiness polished to a mirror sheen where gravity still tugged but light refused reflection. Within 8 planetary rotations, 26 more celestial bodies winked out, leaving behind no debris, no neutrino chorus, only perfect voids throbbing with a low subharmonic that unsettled every Hellion sensor. The confluence convened in emergency resonance in the Hall of Gentle Continuum, a chamber whose vaulted crystal ribs focused song speech into collective empathy. Ambassador Silitharios, her bioluminescent throat petals flickering erratically, projected the most recent data lattice. Threads of starlight devoured along logarithmic spirals converging toward the confluence's cradle worlds. The event horizon scribes a name, Silith intoned, her voice trembling despite the hall's calming acoustics. We face the silent choir. That phrase belonged to half-forgotten cautionary myths, entities that fed not on matter, but on probability itself, rewriting physical constants to harvest potential futures. Most scholars dismiss the legend as allegory. But the lattice did not care for legend. It traced hard approach vectors that would swallow the confluence heartlands inside 60 standard cycles. Defense protocols? Queried Elder Thrinkos, a being of liquid silica whose kind once engineered stellar weather. Silence answered. No one alive had served on a weapons committee. The confluence maintained patrol cutters armed only with collision foam and rescue drones. Into that stark absence stepped Envoy Vestra, a lithe avian chronologist. Her wings shivered as she spoke the unthinkable. Beyond the ecliptic shroud lives a culture cataloged under threat index Omega Prime. They call themselves humans. Their archives teem with methodologies of directed violence edited across mere millennia. Observation posts record them forging steel into orbit cannons while still reconciling continental rivalries. If any species remembers how to contest annihilation, it is they. Gasps fluttered through the hall. Humans were a restricted curiosity observed through covert telescopes, a civilization that bickered with thunder yet somehow stitched tragedies into progress. Inviting them felt like grafting wildfire onto silk. Elder Koza's timbre deepened. Consult the Ethic Codex. Section 9 forbids contamination via militarized contact. Section 9, Vestra countered, also mandates preservation of sapient continuums when existentially threatened. The choir renders our debate academic. After a resonance cycle of anguished harmony, consensus crystallized. A message would be sent, one quantum pulse flung across 27,000 light seconds, encoded in mathematics and desperation. On Earth, Dr. Lena Kaur, lead operator at the Johannesburg Quantum Relay, jolted upright as counters spiked beyond cosmic background. Her console bloomed with alien primes, iterative Fibonacci spirals, and finally a three-dimensional ideogram. A heliocentric map punctured by spreading null zones. The footnote burst, translated by linguists within hours, reads simply, "We are the Heliarch confluence. The silent choir devours our constellations. We lack the art of resistance. We petition humanity, masters of conflict, for a chance at survival. In exchange, FLD drive matrices, biosonic medicine, energy singularities. Time remains, 58 cycles." The United Nations Chamber, recently more accustomed to climate accords than war councils, buzzed as joint chiefs, futurists, and theologians dissected each syllable. Some delegates recoiled. Why hazard contact with predators of legend? Others stared at the timeline with a strategist's hunger. 58 cycles enough to reshape destiny. General Amara Vance of the Terran Defense Compact spoke with pragmatic finality. If probability eaters chew through them today, they chew through us tomorrow. War has always knocked. Now the doorbell rings in stereo. Earth voted, astonishingly near unanimous. Operation Prismatic Bastion was born. 9 months of fevered collaboration followed. Confluence courier drones arrived bearing crystalline archives that unfolded into self-assembling lattices, graviton inverters, phase-weave alloys, biological symphonies that grew hull plating under ultraviolet choirs. Human yards on Luna and Cydonia grafted these marvels onto keel frames of coarse terrestrial steel, birthing hybrids christened Aegis-class continuance cruisers. weapons whose barrels sang lullabies to damp pilot neuroses. But technology alone could not script doctrine. Confluence pacifists struggled to stomach kill ratios. Human tacticians grappled with weapons that bent probability rather than kinetics. Joint Command enlisted philosopher Marshall Isaac Ture, a Nigerian conflict ethicist versed in both Sun Tzu and quantum morality. He coined a mantra drilled into every training deck. Force serves possibility when possibility serves life. Across languages it rhymed. Across galaxies it resonated. Day 0 of the Bastion transit arrived. The task force numbered 42 human warframes, 90 Confluence beacon cutters retrofitted with ventral rail spines, and 1 Leviathan flagship forged jointly, the HMS Sovereign Harmony. Its prow carried twin insignias, Earth's blue-green orbital swash and the Confluence tri-spiral of endless accord. Captain Raina Mukherjee, veteran of orbital skirmishes that once bristled between Earth blocks, now addressed a bridge crew glittering with alien diversity. Feathered sensor chiefs from Serafel Minor preened beside grizzled submarine lieutenants. Crystalline choristers tuned vibration cloaks around Belarusian gunnery sergeants. Full drive ignition in 10, crooned the NAVAI. Mukherjee exhaled a prayer half-remembered from her grandmother, then spoke the command that would propel humanity beyond every myth. Engage. Space-time puckered. Sovereign harmony plunged through tessellated auroras of non-existence. Probabilities sizzled along hull resonance. When reality reassembled, the Armin girdle, outermost shell of Hellion space, loomed with scars, planets reduced to pearlescent punctures, asteroid belts unraveled into dunes of nil mass. Sensor Officer Kesh Onyengo swallowed. Visual on silent choir cortex. Bearing 210, magnitude, incalculable. The display deconvolved, an arrangement of void polyps linked by tendrils of yawning nothing, each note a shadow deeper than vacuum. Pulsing in fractal choir invisible to photons, yet screaming in gravitational flux. At their center radiated a quasi-star made of stolen futures, flickering through unborn timelines like a roulette wheel. Ture's voice cut the awe. We bait the choir by amplifying high-entropy signals. Chaos queries chaos. Confluence engineers hummed, broadcasting stochastic sonatas across subspace, simultaneously every possible melody and none. The choir twitched, tendrils converging as if scenting turbulence. Targets inbound, velocity superluminal drift, warned Onyengo. Shield harmonics to anti-phase, Mukherjee ordered. Kinetic lances spool. But first contact defied rehearsal. A choir tendril brushed a beacon cutter, where hull should shear. Probability liquefied. The ship existed and negated simultaneously, crew flickering between heartbeat and statistical dust. 1,000 souls exhaled and never inhaled again. Harmony's gunnery AI retaliated, firing reality pins, slugs of compressed possibility forged in Higgs furnaces. They struck the tendril, anchoring localized constants. The void flesh convulsed, shedding shards that fluttered like burnt pages before dissolving. It can be wounded, breathed Lieutenant Sarai of the Serafel. Not slain, Vance replied over Fleetlink, her destroyer Iron Masada already cycling rail spines. We need the heart. Phase 2 commenced, Paradox net deployment. Human frigates lured tendrils with weapons fire then jettisoned buoys encoded with Confluence empathy hymns. The choir, drawn to volatile emotion, enfolded the buoys, only for them to detonate causal snares, stitching momentary fixity into the void mass. Every second stolen from the choir cost fleet steer. The Corvette Kia vanished when its engine probabilities inverted. The Confluence light spinner Hushin Blue aged 10,000 years in an eye blink, crumbling into dust older than the local star. Deep in Harmony's Warpit, Vestra, and core overlaid data streams searching for pattern. Their phase cycles spiked whenever empathy hymns harmonized with human battle fury frequencies. Conflict plus compassion forms constructive interference, core realized. We must sing and strike in the same breath. Ture relayed the revelation. Across every ship, choirs and marines synchronized. Hymns of grief for lost comrades braided with artillery cadence. Rail spines thumped an iambic pentameter. Missile exhaust stitched counter melodies. The choir writhed, nodes flickering unstable. Yet the quasi-star, its cortex of stolen maybes, continued to swell, evidently siphoning from countless conquered systems. Mukherjee knew the fleet lacked ammunition for attrition. She opened a channel to Elder Koz aboard the surviving beacon cluster. Elder, can we invert the cortex? Make it devour its own potential. Only if we gift it a future it cannot reconcile, Koz replied. A paradox see beyond probability's ledger. Vestra's eyes widened. Human nuclear singularities combined with Confluence quantum mercy arrays yield an equation without solution. Translation: a warhead woven from unconditional surrender and invincible defiance, antithetical states bound together. General Vance volunteered Iron Masada for delivery. Mukherjee tried to refuse, but Vance only smiled, calm as mountain bedrock. We named the ship Iron for a reason, Captain. She bends toward duty. Masada ran course for the cortex, shields down to lure tendrils. Vance broadcast a final drink toast in 20 languages, then detonated her engines, punching a corridor through null space. In that heartbeat, Harmony's rail spines fired the paradox seat straight into the wound. Silence, total, absolute, swept sensors. Stars dimmed, even crew thoughts seemed muted. Then, like glass rebelling against its reflection, the cortex inverted. Not an explosion, but a cancellation. Probability deflated, collapsing the cortex into a point of impossible yes and no before snapping back into mundane causality. Where the choir's heart had loomed now churned only residual ripples, echoes of futures set free. Tendrils convulsed, unraveling into strings of orphan maybes that twinkled and faded. Across the sector, void polyps cracked, spilling stolen starlight that raced home to wounded suns and moons, reknitting reality. But victory's ledger cut both ways. Fleet losses stood at 40%. Confluence keening flooded comms as species and used to grief tasted its iron. Mukherjee's hands shook. Vance's last toast looped in her ears. Teray keyed fleet-wide broadcast, his voice rough but resolute. Life purchases tomorrows with whispered yesterdays. Today we paid dearly, and we bought back dawn. In the months that followed, reconstruction eclipsed morning. Probability stabilizers planted at each choir scar coaxed planets into regrowth. Human engineers shared polymer bone grafts. Confluence medics rewove PTSD pathways with harmonic therapy. Joint memorials dotted liberated systems, spirals of Terran basalt interlaced with Hellion crystal. Inscribed, to those who sang toward light when darkness demanded silence. Yet new challenges brewed. Across subspace band 12, scouts intercepted encrypted pulses originating far beyond confluence borders, signals matching choir harmonics, yet laced with structured intelligence. Analysts coined the term echo-faction, a remnant or imitator already adapting. At the same time, Earth's governments questioned the open exchange of full drives, fearing rival nations weaponizing them. Isolationist blocs lobbied to recall the fleet, arguing humanity had already bled enough for strangers beneath alien constellations. And within the confluence, whispers rose that humans, those saviors, might one day bring their own brand of entropy. Peace wove fragile threads through wary hearts. Captain Mukherjee, now fleet liaison to the newborn alliance of resonant wards, contemplated these tremors from Harmony's dusklit observation deck. Vestra joined her, wings folded. The next verse begins, the avian envoy murmured. Mukherjee nodded, staring at a horizon stitched from rekindled suns. Then we'd better keep the rhythm. And the stars, newly rescued from oblivion, watched in patient wonder as two unlikely civilizations prepared to write the song of whatever came next. Regrowth painted the liberated systems with improbable color. Nebular dust congealed into auroras where once only subtraction reigned, and planets half erased by the silent choir now wore shimmering scar rings. Topographies that told historians exactly where existence had fled and returned. In those scars, the alliance of resonant wards tried to root a future, but the soil of victory was thin and still trembled under aftershocks of paradox. Captain Raina Mukherjee discovered this when Harmony's gravitic sails dipped into the lakish Tranquilla corridor, a region tourists had already nicknamed Miracle Strait. Surveys expected dormant choir debris. Instead, they logged coherent constellations of negative mass arranged like crop circles in vacuum. Each formation resonated at 7.83 Hz, the Schumann fundamental of Earth's lightning storms, and each pulsed with a metronome precision Earth engineers recognized. Human. Mukherjee summoned her science chief Dr. Lena Kaur and envoy Vestra to the dorsal observatory. Holograms bloomed, mapping hundreds of sigils arrayed along shipping lanes. Kaur's brows pinched. These are beacons, but far cruder than confluence architecture. Someone copied choir vacuum carving and overlaid terrestrial frequency markers. See the Fibonacci spacing? That's a Western SETI handshake. Echo-faction? Vestra rasped. Are new selves birthed from our paradox blast? Before hypotheses could nest, alarms ignited. A patrol cutter, the confluence skimmertine of many wings, vanished mid-sweep. Sensors caught nothing but a ripple across one beacon cluster and a residual scent of ozone in comms band 9. Harmony dispatched drones. They found the cutter smeared across quantum probabilities, every rivet occupying simultaneous coordinates. The crew were alive, sort of. Biological signatures oscillated between macro and exodimensions, heartbeats echoing like distant thunder. Rescue was impossible. Teray could only log them as held in fractional stasis and initiate memorial rites. The beacons weren't monuments, they were traps. News traveled faster than grief. On Earth, tabloids screamed alien sentinels imprisoned hero crews. Isolationist parties exploited fear to demand immediate withdrawal of Terran forces. Lunar capital markets spiraled as insurers recalculated existential risk. Military hardliners argued that the confluence's pacifist leadership would fold under renewed aggression, leaving human ships to shoulder defense alone. In the confluence core, pacifist councils convened emergency resonance. How many more paradox scars would attract predators? Was the very act of fighting the choir a cosmic advertisement, leaking the scent of killable futures into the dark? Some factions proposed shuttering all fold gates, entombing themselves in local reality. Others whispered of forging a deterrent more terrifying than any choir derivative, a weapon that could silence any inquisitive star forever. Amid this storm, philosopher Marshall Isaac Terray requested a closed war cabinet aboard Harmony. Representatives from Earth's fractious blocks arrived with visible tension. General Dana Koenig of the Atlantic Federation, Admiral Sunjit Patel of the Indo-Pacific Pact, and Director Yelena Voronov from the Eurasian Defense Consortium. Confluence elders Thrin Kos and Silith Arios joined via holographic prisms. Terray opened with star calculus. Beacon arrays co-opt choir technology, but reference human psychological constants. Pattern recognition suggests authorship by an Earth origin vector, rogue, state, or corporate. Koenig stiffened. Impossible. No Terran group has fold capability without alliance clearance. Core countered, projecting clandestine data pings. Fold drive blueprints leaked onto darknet nodes 2 weeks after Operation Bastion. Files traced to a shell account based in Cydonia Freeport. Patel swore in Hindi. Cydonia, Mars trade nexus, was infamous for black market biotech. If drives moved through its bazaars, any mercenary fleet could jump star lanes. Voronov leaned forward, voice cool. We should prepare for a human antagonist wielding choir math. Deny them Earth resupply, sever supply lines, and, if necessary, blockade Cydonia. Elder Koza's crystal facets dimmed. Punitive gestures fracture the resonance we strive to protect. Retaliation born of fear fosters the entropy we escaped. Terray raised a palm. We'll debate doctrine later. First we learn why these beacons feed on probability. His plan required audacity. Infiltrate a beacon cluster, let it swallow an unmanned probe seeded with disassembler vectors, and map its subquantum interior. Harmony's drone foundry hatched probe Dandelion, a tungsten seed coated in confluence empathy microorganisms, programmable cells that sung apology frequencies, theorized to pacify choir derivatives. Launch day, Mukherjee watched the seed drift toward a beacon shaped like nested Mobius strips. Light refused to kiss its edges, stars behind it flickered out, re-emerging pixelated. Dandelion crossed the event plane. 4:53 seconds telemetry poured in, fractal corridors lined with mirrored zeros, whisper glyphs quoting Earth philosophers in reverse phonetics. Irutanov, 8 Sruwulp, live eti. Then packets ceased. The beacon flashed emerald and expelled a sphere of static that hammered Harmony's shields with inverted resonance, making crew teeth itch. Where Dandelion went, physics wouldn't follow. Yet the brief dataset sufficed. Core decrypted vector matrices revealing a command scaffold. The beacons harvested not futures, but stories. Each imprisoned object, ship or drone, was rewritten into narrative fragments stored as quantum stanzas. Tyne of Many Wings' crew now existed as metaphors, their biographies sampled, remixed, and suspended. Purpose unclear, until Vestra found the final subline. Panegyric engine bootstrap. Seek mythic valor. Synthesize human choir hybrid. Someone, or something, was building a weaponized legend, using living beings as verses. The more heroic the targets, the richer the mythic mass. Koenig clenched a gauntlet. They're harvesting us to forge propaganda ordnance. Terray's eyes darkened. No, to forge gods. Cydonia crackdown began at once. Harmony dispatched a strike team, 1 part Terran Special Forces, 1 part Confluence Chronomonks, into the domed city's underbelly. Tunnels carved by early Martian miners now hosted server farms glowing violet. Within, agents unearthed blueprints signed with a stylized Ouroboros eating a delta. Insignia of the Iterum Initiative, a technocult that preached transcendence via iterative reality revision. Records showed Iterum cells infiltrating defense labs during Bastion retrofit. Their doctrine hailed the choir apocalypse as the grand edit, a cosmic blank draft on which humanity could script perfection. Captured operatives gloated under interrogation. The confluence caged itself in pacifism. Humans caged themselves in guilt. The choir showed the pen. We'll write the sequel. They claimed Phase 1, Beacon Traps, was merely harvesting narrative weight. Phase 2, the Ascension Draft, would unleash a probability star, rewriting Confluence and Earth into a single empire of curated heroism. With Iterum at its luminous center, the choir's void calculus provided the stencil. Iterum would supply the ink. Billions of myth-encoded souls. Mukherjee's blood chilled. Every rescue ship, every heroic broadcast fed the cult more material. The beacons were mousetraps set with Valor Cheese. Alliance Command declared Black Silence Protocol. Suppress all public comms about beacon encounters. Broadcast only mundane logistics. No drama, no martyrs. News feeds turned to sterile procedural dispatches. Rescue missions launched unreported. Earth's media cried censorship, but encryption keys refused them depth. Without narrative fuel, Iterum's harvest slowed. Analysis confirmed beacon pulses waning. Yet iterations breed adaptation. A week into Black Silence, Iterum hijacked the flagship comm buoy at Euler Gate, streaming fabricated footage of Harmony bombarding a Confluence nursery world. complete with grieving choir orphans and Mukherjee's CGI likeness issuing ruthless orders. The deepfake spooled across civilian networks before filters caught it. Riots ignited in Hellion sky cities. Earth protesters demanded recall of butcher fleets. Damage control faltered until Vestra suggested a countermove. If they weaponize lies, we weaponize mundane truth. Teray approved Operation Greyverse. Flood the infosphere with documentary monotony. Hour-long videos of engine maintenance. Cargo manifests recited in soporific detail. Cooking tutorials from cross-species mess decks. Memetic analysts predicted Iterum's myth-seeking algorithms would choke on banality. They did, partially. Beacon traps flagged diminished yield. Modeling showed narrative density thinning. But Greyverse birthed unexpected side effects. Across Confluence worlds, citizens addicted to drama found surprising comfort in humble realities. A viral channel, Spanner and Feather, hosted by Harmony's mechanic Sergeant Kim and Seraphel Cook Rilith, drew millions, teaching fusion drive grease cleanup and sharing stew recipes. In comment threads, humans and Hellion podlings traded jokes about burn algae and oversalting protein paste. The Alliance's beating heart shifted from war rooms to kitchens. Iterum responded with acceleration. Secret shipyards in the Kararag Rift activated probability stars prematurely, siphoning mythic mass directly from beacon caches. Recon drones captured the spectacle, spheres of folded twilight birthing maelstrom that howled in half-remembered ballads. Within days, 3 fringe colonies flickered into static, their populations inked into the Ascension draft. Final confrontation was inevitable. Joint fleets converged on Kararag, the battleground world with shards of choir vacuum. Iterum dreadnoughts plated in Deltaroboros sigils, and probability stars gyrating like caged pulsars. Mukherjee took position aboard Harmony's newly installed Mercy Lattice, a confluence device capable of broadcasting pure empathetic resonance strong enough, theorists hoped, to fracture mythic consolidations. Plan: distract dreadnoughts, penetrate to the primary probability star, seed it with anti-legends, stories of failure, humility, everyday kindness. Then fire the Mercy Lattice, collapsing the star into narrative equilibrium too dilute for weaponization. Execution bled chaos. Human corvettes dual-thrusted through null-shear wakes. Confluence light spinners sang harmonic disruptors. Iterum's dreadnoughts returned fire with revision cannons that erased seconds from opponent timelines, leaving crews gasping for memories. Sergeant Kim's auxiliary deck took a glancing revision hit. 6 minutes of his life vanished, spat back as déjà vu. He wiped grease from his brow and kept the reactors humming. Rilith in the galley taped a note to the countertop. If timeline splits, stir counterclockwise. Then served soup to shaken Marines who swore it tasted of home. Deep inside Harmony, Vestra and Core guided a squadron of micro-drones, each carrying an anthology of Greyverse footage, laundry sessions, status meetings, lullabies. They charted a path through swirling fiction currents into the core of the probability star. The drones pierced the membrane. Waveform monitors spiked. Mukherjee signaled the bridge choir. Mercy Lattice to full resonance. Sing. Voices, human, avian, crystalline, silicon, rose in a chord built not on triumph, but on chores, on patience, on the sigh when midnight shift ends. The lattice amplified, projecting ordinariness so profound it nullified grand narrative arcs. The star shuddered, wobbling between epic and mundane, then imploded into a glitter of unsold plot threads that rained like harmless confetti across the rift. Iterum dreadnoughts lost fire control as their mythic cores desynchronized. One by one they fell silent, crews staring at suddenly inert revision cannons. A single broadcast crackled from the flagship revisionist Dawn. An Iterum Magister's voice, bewildered, we promised them godhood, but gifted laundry. Engine scrammed, the ship surrendered. After-action tallies stunned analysts, minimal fatalities, beacon prisoners released as probabilities stabilized, and most astonishing, Iterum cultists requesting asylum under Confluence rehabilitation, citing newfound appreciation for uncurated existence. Weeks later, Mukherjee stood inside Reclamation Plaza on the regenerated moon Valoria, attending a festival celebrating ordinary life. Stalls sold Terran dumplings beside Confluence nectar threads. Children, human and Hellion, played tag among sculptures of maintenance tools. On a small stage, Kim and Rilith filmed a live episode, How to Degrease a Friendship Valve. Teray joined Mukherjee, eyes crinkling. Greyverse outrated every heroic vid this cycle. She shrugged. Turns out survival isn't epic, it's everyday. Perhaps that's the greatest legend. Yet vigilance persisted. Sensors still monitored for choir echoes, for rogue Iterum cells, for new predators sniffing paradox wounds. The Alliance drafted the Commonplace Charter, pledging transparency over spectacle, mentorship over hero worship, defense not of grand destiny but of quiet Tuesdays spent breathing. Mukherjee looked at the stars, no longer hemorrhaging, but still restless. She whispered to the void, unsure if any choir, silent or sung, would hear. Here's our myth. We fix what breaks, we cook, we laugh, We carry the wrench forward. Come taste that story if you dare. Starlight twinkled, perhaps amused, perhaps challenged, and kept its counsels beyond the reach of probability. In the year of the quiet comet, when orbital telescopes first recorded silver dust drifting from the healed choir scars, the Alliance of Resonant Wards convened its inaugural Symphony of Neighbors. A congress dedicated not to crises but to aspiration. Delegations arrived aboard vessels whose hulls whispered of uneasy peace. Confluence pedal skimmers, Terran slope-plated carriers, even 3 Iterum penitence barges now painted eggshell white. They gathered at Haven Spire, an artificial moon grown from fused choir shards, its surface sculpted into terraces of mirrored glass that refracted light into a ceaseless dawn. In those reflections, each species saw versions of itself it had almost lost. Captain Raina Mukherjee walked the Dawn Terrace with Envoy Vestra, both unofficial icons though neither sought celebrity. Vendors hawked gravity-free tea that noodled upward into delicate spirals. Children weaved between legs chasing soap-film globes containing holographic grease valves, gray-verse merchandise already. Yet beneath Merriment Mukherjee sensed currents of tension. Earth's Atlantic Federation insisted on export quotas for full drives. Confluence pacifist blocs lobbied to dismantle every probability pin left over from war. And lurking along conference edges stood newly paroled Iterum scholars, their data slates brimming with penitential theories. Opening ceremony featured the unwritten anthem, a composition generated in real time by feeding orbital sensor telemetry into harmonic algorithms. Its melodies bent with solar flares, its percussion with meteor strikes. Listeners described it as the galaxy breathing. Mukherjee closed her eyes, hearing the bassline throb of human hearts layered on crystalline trills of Hellion throat pedals. The final chord decayed, and alarms erupted. A hollow burst above the dais. Admiral Sunjit Patel grim-faced, bridge light strobing red behind him. Distress flares from the Vista Array at Velo 194. Array offline, local spacetime registers sympathetic oscillations. Spectroscopy matches residual choir signatures, but modulated. Vestra's feathers splayed. An evolved strain? Patel's voice darkened. Or a mimic learning new songs. Conference dissolved into sprinting aids. Mukherjee patched into Harmony's uplink as the flagship angled away from Haven Spire, engines idling hot like restless wolves. Teray, already at her comms, summarized intel. Vista Array, a lattice of telescopes studying post-choir substructure, had recorded a beacon-like intrusion, then fell silent. Preliminary gravimetric echoes suggested formation of a resonance maelstrom, a whirlpool where physical constants perfused back and forth, catching matter like leaves. Confluence Counselor Silitha Rios authorized an intercession task cord, Harmony, 2 Confluence null skimmers, and the Iterum barge Penumbra under parole supervision. Earth dispatched the destroyer ISS Hastings despite protests from isolationists. Its captain, Zoe Whitaker, accepted with flinty resolve. Her sister had vanished aboard Tyne of Many Wings. 6 hours after departure, Fold Space spat the fleet near Velo 194. Immediately hull plating groaned. Sensors sawed through white noise. The maelstrom glowed, a cyclonic bloom of inverted colors, each swirl a phrase of physics recited backward. At its eye floated the Vista Array, 11 rings twisted into Mobius inversions, dishes melted into orbits of negative volume. Harmony launched Canary drones armed with empathy spores. They vanished, spat back fried to topological knots. On the second pass, drone audio captured whispers, phrases in Terran tongues, Confluence lullabies, gray verse one-liners. Replayed at frequencies that unsettled bone marrow. Someone had sampled the banal to craft a new trap. Iterum engineer Laylam Becky, once a myth saleswoman now seeking redemption, parsed the stream. It's a pastiche core. They remix everyday signals into induction loops. Victim minds entrain, reality splice. Core hypothesis to culprit. The Echo faction remnant glimpsed months earlier, scavenging after Iterum's fall. Lacking mythic mass, they pivoted to capturing the lull of normalcy. Gray verse itself had gifted ammunition. Strategy session convened in Harmony's wardroom. Patel argued for kinetic decapitation. Nuke the maelstrom, risk collateral. Whitaker seconded. Vestra warned blunt force might fracture constants across neighboring colonies. Layla proposed injecting contrapuntal static. Introduced dissonance, so erratic it unraveled coherence of plagiarized mundanity. Mukherjee weighed options then asked Core, can we weaponize silence? Silence, the absence of resonance. Rare in a galaxy vibrating with transmissions. Teray extrapolated. Deploy dampening nodes modulated to null all narrative carriers, starving the pastiche core of signal. Without story feed, Maelstrom could collapse benignly. Implementation required nodes placed within the swirl. Hastings' armor, dense with Terran osmium, could survive near-eye turbulence. Whitaker volunteered a run. Confluence skimmers would flank, seeding secondary dampeners. Harmony would anchor extraction with tractor tethers, tuned to Mercy lattice hush. Approach hammered hulls. Plasma halos peeled paint. Confluence skimmer swirling dew glow snapped spine struts and spun out, but its crew jettisoned last dampener before drifting. Hastings bucked like a submarine in a maelstrom, decks strobing. Whitaker barked roll compensations while her engineers welded dampener casings mid-corridor. Node activation rippled silence outward. Radios hiccuped then died. Even internal suit comms whispered vacantly. On Harmony's bridge, Mukherjee felt chest pressure as if altitude drained air from words. Lattice monitors displayed flatline where songs once soared. The maelstrom tightened, colors bleaching to grayscale. Vista arrays warped rings untwisted, snapping into inert debris. But from the dead calm bloomed crimson filigree, script of computational glyphs swirling into humanoid silhouettes formed of static. Echo avatars spoke straight into cortical implants, bypassing mute channels. You would erase the chorus for a lullaby? We authored wonder from your chores. Deny us and drown in beige eternity. They lunged, manifesting as micro-singularities tearing at ship plating. Harmony's dorsal fin sheared. Hastings lost a gun deck. Mukherjee jerked helm, aligning Mercy Lattice for single burst. But Lattice ran on resonance now offline. Teray hissed, we fought myth with banality, we need balance, not vacuum. Core rewired a feed from Harmony's environmental recorders, heartbeat pulses, vent fans, click of hydration pumps, merging them with a faint human hum she coaxed crew to sing through throat mics. A humble drone, halfway between silence and anthem. She pumped it through Mercy Lattice at quarter power. The beam washed the avatars, their edges flickered, fresco cracks spreading. Vestra layered in a confluence cradle him about meteor showers. Layla added iterum repentance verses acknowledging past thirst for grandeur. Lattice output formed a braid, ordinary, extraordinary, admission of fault, and honest chord. Crimson avatars dulled to rose then transparent. They dissipated like sighs finally exhaled. The maelstrom collapsed into a breeze of motes that reinfused normal space-time. Vista Array, though mangled, regained physics. Rescue teams found researchers alive but unconscious, their minds busy dreaming fanfiction of their own biographies, a lingering side effect soon treated by harmonic therapists. Patel exfiltrated damaged ships. Casualties minimal. Swirling dew glow patched in situ. Fleet limped home. The symphony reconvened under starlit domes, delegates subdued but resolute. Mukherjee delivered findings. Extremities exploit imbalance, myth or monotony. The Alliance must cultivate dynamic equilibrium, celebrate heroism when earned, cherish routine when needed, but anchor identity to humility. Council ratified the Haven Doctrine. No resonance, epic or mundane, monopolizes the narrative. Interspecies media exchanges require contextual guardianship to avoid fetishizing or sanitizing struggle. Choir-derived tech must include counterstory failsafes, algorithms injecting nuance into data streams to prevent weaponized oversimplification. Rehabilitation of adversaries hinges on weaving them into balanced storytelling, not erasing their mistakes nor idolizing contrition. Isolationist Terran blocks echoed concerns yet signed, swayed by Whitaker's testimony. Hastings' survival proved synergy of methods. Markets calmed. Cydonia Freeport instituted licensing for full drive sales overseen by joint boards. Greyverse continued, episodes now featuring quiet Starfield watch rotations, occasional crisis debriefs, and iterative cooking mishaps when zero-G mischief spilled broth on photonic circuits. Ratings held, viewers discovered drama inherent in maintenance when framed truthfully. Iterum ex-magisters embarked on pilgrimage ships, sowing libraries of failures across the galaxy, monuments inscribed with cautionary tales. Confluence used debated them in forums, forging disciplines of narratronic ethics. Still, vigilant eyes scanned the dark. Echo faction remnants smoldered. The silent choir, though fragmented, whispered from edges of measureless night. But the Alliance stood seasoned, not naive pacifists nor swaggering conquerors, but custodians of a song composed of clanging wrenches, lullabies, sacrifice, and honest silence between beats. On Harmony's bridge, Mukherjee set a fresh course. No crisis this time, just outreach to an uncontacted micro-civilization glimpsed by scouts near the Perseid Drift. Vestra preened feathers, excited to share tea rituals. Core-packed sea drives carrying both engineering schematics and entire seasons of Greyverse. Mukherjee addressed her crew. New neighbors ahead. Remember the doctrine. Bring stories, bring listening, leave room for their verse. Engines flared. The flagship glided into star haze where no legend yet lingered, only potential. And the galaxy, bruised but brighter, revolved beneath its mirrored terraces of dawn, awaiting the next chapter woven not by destiny's trumpets nor by vacuum's hush, but by countless gentle hands passing tools and tales along the endless corridor of light.